So I want to go back and revisit some elements of DISC. I'm not going to go through it all again in great detail. We've done that previously in another segment around DISC, but I wanted to just go back and remind ourselves of some of the things that can occur when we are stressed. DISC is really helpful in helping us understand that the behaviours is just reflecting a stress level and is not the person. We need to distinguish the person from the behaviour. We sometimes see behaviours because a person is stressed. It doesn't make the person good, bad, or indifferent. It just gives us some really valuable information about what we are looking at when a person is stressed. So if we remember dominant, influencer, security, and compliance. And what we know about these different styles is that dominant people tend to be controlling because their driver is winning or success. So we often see controlling behavior. They do many other things. They do many things, but one of their significant behaviors that we see is that they like to control an outcome because they like to win. What we know is that they fear loss of control. And when they get very stressed, as a result of that fear of losing control, they can become more controlling. So we would have all seen that behavior and we would become aware of that in our own selves at times, particularly if we are a high D in our personality style, that when we get very stressed, we may become more controlling. And that might look like using our body or our language to control a situations. And so we just need to be mindful of that. It can sometimes look like my way or the highway, like you will do what you're told, that type of thing. So we just need to be aware of that. As a leader, as an influencer, the behaviors that we can see is they tend to be social, very sociable and optimistic, and they're driven by experience. I can spell. So they're wanting to have a good experience. They want other people to have a good experience. They very much influence organizations and groups around the experience. When they get stressed, their fear is, oh my God, Tom, I'm going to start that again. So I want to just revisit DISC very quickly. I'm not going to go through it all. We've discussed that more in another segment, but I wanted to just revisit this because it's a great reminder of the way in which our different behaviours may surface when we're very stressed. What we know about dominant people is that as part of their behavioural style, they do like to control an outcome because they are driven by winning. They want to be successful and win. So what can happen is that when they get stressed, and that stress can usually come around because of a loss of control. And that loss of control could be a whole range of different things. It could be that another leader has stepped in and is doing the work, that is headbutting between different people, you've lost funding, whatever it might look like, but there's a loss of control. When a dominant person feels a loss of control, they can become more controlling. So that increases. So that behavior of wanting to control things can increase, and what that can look like is my way or the highway, or standing up and sort of being very firm, and this is where we're going. So just be mindful of your behavior if you are a high D, of when you get very stressed, what are your team seeing? Now, influencers are very sociable beings. They like to use relationships to drive decision-making and get things done. And they very much calling on experience, I can't spell, to achieve those outcomes. So the driver for the high I, the influencer, is experience. They want other people to have a good experience, and they want to have a good experience. So that's really valuable information to know. Now, what happens is when they get scared because they fear social rejection. So if they are fearing social rejection, and that might look like my ideas are not successful, this is not going to be a good experience, somebody's not talking to me, a whole range of different things that can come into that bucket. You don't like me, so the idea I put forward is not what you want, and now I think you don't like me. A whole heap of stuff. What you can see when a high I gets very stressed and has these fears of social rejection is that they can become sarcastic, and they can become whiny and needy. And so again, this is really important, that if you're a leader and you get very stressed and you feel like the team doesn't like you, or that the work that you're doing is not accepted and people are having a bad experience, then this might be some of the behaviors that you default to, that you might become sarcastic, or you might become needy, and you might draw attention to yourself. That might not be okay in that moment. So just be really mindful of that. Now, security people, they like safety. They like to feel safe. They like to know what's going on. They're very much about relationships and close relationships, and they like the status quo. They don't like sudden change. So, and they're the nurturers. No, come back. They're the nurturers. Oh, don't do that. The nurturers of the group. They very much look after people, because in looking after people, we create safe environments. We make sure that everything's okay. They're driven by wanting to feel safe, and they will often basically do anything not to rock the boat to achieve that. They don't like sudden change. And so if they get very stressed because there is sudden change, or somebody's expecting them to do something or make a decision quickly that they don't feel comfortable with, that type of thing, or they get overwhelmed, what they can do is withdraw. And as a leader, when a leader withdraws and they go into themselves and they become less communicative, they're not giving facial feedback, they might sometimes even leave the building. They might go and suddenly work from home for a period of time or whatever as a leader. If the team feels that there's a disconnect there, that can be incredibly stressful to a team. It's like, can't talk to so-and-so because they're not giving you much today. So just be mindful of that if you are a high S, what are the behaviors that you call upon when you get really stressed, and what is your team saying? And finally, on the compliance people, these people fear criticism. They are driven by a fear of failure, because they like to be accurate. And so what we can see is that when a high C is then very, very stressed because they feel that they've been criticized, that things have not gone the way they've liked them to go, they don't have enough time to be accurate and get things right, all of the different things, then what we can see is that they become critical of others. So they can criticize others. So they deflect their discomfort onto others and they criticize them. Now, what we're seeing here are just behaviors that reflect our stress levels. But what's important for you as leaders is that you need to be acutely aware of what you do when you're stressed and what the team sees, because all of these behaviors down the bottom here of controlling, sarcastic, withdrawing, or being highly critical can be very difficult for a team to manage. And when we're our best selves, that's not an issue. When we're not at our best selves, this can become an issue, particularly if this happens regularly, if this is something that the teams are seeing on a regular basis. What are the behaviours? The occasional behaviour that is more extreme in this bottom line, they can cope with that, particularly if you've given the heads up that this is what it might look like when I get stressed. But if this is sort of a long-term response to overwhelm and exhaustion and the like, then this can start to have an impact on the well-being of your team.